In Israel, an Iranian ballistic missile struck a residential district of Beit Shemesh on Sunday, killing 9 people and wounding 27 others. Another strike killed a woman in Tel Aviv. Other Iranian missiles were intercepted by Israeli defenses, including one that crashed onto a street in Jerusalem, injuring several people. Iran also launched retaliatory strikes against all Gulf Arab nations that host U.S. military bases, with the exception of Oman, Bahrain, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia. All were struck. One person was killed in Abu Dhabi, another person killed in Kuwait, where a defense ministry official reported 3 U.S. F-15 fighter jets were mistakenly shot down by Kuwaiti air defenses. In Saudi Arabia, an oil refinery caught fire after it was struck by debris from an Iranian missile, closing a facility that processes over 500,000 barrels of crude oil a day. Shipping through the Strait of Hormuz has effectively come to a halt due to the U.S.-Israeli attack on Iran. Oil prices have surged to a 52-week high, with many analysts predicting they could soon top $100 a barrel. Hundreds of thousands of travelers have been stranded as all flights through some of the world's busiest international airports have been grounded. Stock markets across Asia opened sharply lower on fears the attack on Iran will slow the global economy. Lebanon's health ministry says at least 31 people have been killed and nearly 150 wounded since Israel launched renewed airstrikes on Beirut's suburbs and other parts of Lebanon on Sunday. Tens of thousands of residents of southern and eastern Lebanon were seen fleeing their homes after Israel ordered people in nearly 50 villages to evacuate ahead of a planned bombing campaign. Israel's military says its renewed war on Lebanon comes in response to missiles and drones fired by Hezbollah in retaliation for the assassination of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. They were Hezbollah's first major violations of a ceasefire that took effect in November 2024. During that time, the United Nations peacekeeping force in Lebanon, known as UNIFIL, documented more than 15,000 ceasefire violations committed by Israel. Officials in the United Kingdom say an Iranian drone struck a British airbase in Cyprus overnight, causing limited damage and no casualties. Iran's attack came after British Prime Minister Keir Starmer said he'd agreed to the Pentagon's request to use British military bases for what Starmer called defensive strikes on Iranian missile sites. Separately, France said it was sending 2 warships to the Red Sea to join a European naval mission. Meanwhile, Germany's foreign minister denied reports that Berlin was seriously considering joining the war against Iran. In Spain, Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez condemned the U.S.-Israeli strikes as a breach of international law.
Se puede estar contra un régimen odioso.
It is possible to be against a hateful regime, as Spanish society as a whole is against the Iranian regime, and at the same time be against an unjustified, dangerous military intervention that's outside international law. One must be against a war that was started without the authorization of the United States Congress or the United Nations Security Council.
On Saturday, Russia and China requested an emergency meeting of the United Nations Security Council, where China's foreign minister called for an immediate ceasefire and the resumption of talks. Russia condemned the U.S.-Israeli attacks as another unprovoked act of armed aggression. Today, U.S. First Lady Melania Trump is presiding over a UN Security Council meeting titled Children, Technology, and Education in Conflict. It's the first time a spouse of a world leader has chaired such a session, and comes just days after U.S.-Israeli strikes killed scores of Iranian school children. The White House says top Trump administration officials will brief both chambers of Congress Tuesday about the U.S. strikes on Iran. President Trump launched the attacks without congressional authorization, which is required under Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. On Saturday, Democratic Congressmember Ro Khanna of California and Republican Congressmember Thomas Massie of Kentucky demanded swift action on a war powers resolution that would rein in Trump's attack unless Congress approves military action. This comes as top Democrats, including Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, are under fire from anti-war groups who note they oppose Trump's attack on Iran on procedural grounds rather than opposition to war. A Reuters Ipsos poll conducted over the weekend found only 1 in 4 U.S. residents approves the U.S. strikes on Iran. In Pakistan, at least 24 people were killed Sunday as angry protests over the U.S.-Israeli attacks on Iran were met with violence. In Karachi, security guards at the U.S. consulate fired on demonstrators who breached the outer wall, killing 10 people. At least 14 were killed in northern Pakistan, where demonstrators vandalized several buildings and set fire to United Nations regional offices. Meanwhile, Pakistan escalated its war on Afghanistan's Taliban over the weekend with an attempted strike on Bagram Air Base, the former U.S. military base north of Kabul. Hundreds of soldiers and scores of civilians have been killed in cross-border fighting since Pakistan announced a state of open war with Afghanistan last week.